بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد، إخوة الإسلام عباد الله. This evening we have the half-hour Deen roundtable discussion. And inshallah, joining me this evening will be our brother Abu Abdus Salam Siddiq Al-Juyani and our brother Abu Ismail or Abu Abdullah Ismail. And may Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala preserve both of these brothers. Now, currently right now, our brother Abu Abdus Salam is in the chat, and I'm currently waiting on our brother Ismail to enter the chat. Now, this particular discussion will be doing something a little bit different this evening, because whoever has a question, a comment, a concern, or even a differing view as it relates to the subject that will be touched on this evening, then we definitely will open the chat to the brothers and sisters to enter and voice their opinions. As it relates to the sisters, then we just request that you keep your cameras off. And if you come in with your camera on, without a doubt, you most definitely want to be covered, but probably, have the camera facing away, placed away from your face and like this for obvious reasons. With that said, this particular discussion is based on the narration of the Prophet ﷺ as found in Al-Mu'jam Al-Awsat by Imam Tabarani, and it's upon the authority of Anas ibn Malik. With the Prophet ﷺ, he stated, "Man razaqahu Allahu imra'atan salihatan, faqad a'anahu ala shatri dinihi." That whomever Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala gives a righteous, whoever Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala provides with a righteous woman, then he has aided him upon half of his deen. فَلْيَتَّقِ اللَّهَ فِي الشَّطْرِ الثَّانِي. So he should fear Allah as it relates to the other half of his deen. Now, in this particular narration, there's a difference of opinion amongst the scholars on if this narration is authentic or not. And this particular narration, there are varying chains to it. Some are very weak. Some are very weak. And even the chain that I just mentioned has some weakness in it. But the brothers and sisters, if they want a more in-depth understanding as it relates to the chain, then one, this evening is not really for that. That's one. And two, they can find this discussion in the Silsila al-Hadith al-Sahiha by Sheikh al-Albani, as Sheikh al-Albani, Hafidhahullah Ta'ala, graded the narration to be Hasan. So it, with Sheikh al-Albani and others from amongst the scholars, is looked at as an acceptable narration, and that which is derived from it being the haqq, because the narration is acceptable. Inshallah. So with that said, then this is what the discussion will be surrounding this particular, or let me say it like this. when looking at this particular narration and what the Prophet ﷺ stated therein, that the man has been aided as it relates to half of his deen. And this is something that for he who hopes to meet Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala in good standing with Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, then he hopes to fulfill that which is mentioned within this deen. And so it's an encouragement for marriage. And marriage with the Muslim is something that's very important. Marriage with the Muslim is something that's very important, and it is something that the Muslim man and woman strives to achieve. With that said, in order for the marriage to be successful, without a doubt, all parties have to come in with good intentions, yani with pleasing Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, and likewise with fulfilling the rights that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has made binding upon both husband and wife to fulfill. And when that happens, then you have a situation, a harmonious situation that will take place by the permission of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. When that doesn't happen, then you have other than that. You have other than that. And unfortunately, and I don't want to make it seem like this is the norm, but unfortunately, in certain aspects or segments within our communities, we hear about horror stories. We hear about horror stories. Now, again, I'm not going to be from amongst those that act as if this is the norm, because we know there are many positive and encouraging stories of successful marriages as well, both monogamous and polygynous, But we can't ignore the other types of stories that we hear taking place within the communities. And this is the purpose of this discussion, is the purpose of this discussion, and it will be an ongoing and continuous discussion, is to try to shed light on certain things and to alleviate these problems from occurring. That's the point and purpose of this discussion. So again, I want to mention, as I see more people tuning in to view, that one, the link to the chat room will be placed in the comments section. And so whoever wants to enter with their comments, questions, concerns, or differing of opinion from something that they heard, they can present that. Now, when dealing with this particular subject, with marriage in general, we know that marriage is very vast. And so we'll only be dealing with an aspect of marriage with the hopes of shedding some light on things that should be done if they're not being done, and things that are occurring that are considered negative, with the hopes that people who are listening can reflect and change their approach in this regard. So this particular discussion tonight will be centered around the courtship. It will be centered around the courtship. And alhamdulillah, our brother Abu Abdus Salam is currently with us, as the viewers can see. And I'm not sure when our brother Abu Abdullah will enter the room, but inshallah, perhaps we can start the discussion, and when he comes in, he'll add his encouragements as well. So with this said, with that said, then first and foremost, and I want to say to the brother, Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And I see our brother Ismail just joined the. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. If you're not, if
could you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine. Let me fix this. Now we're live now, so just to make that clear.
Okay, I can hear you now. Okay, barakallahu feekum.
Yeah. So we're live now. I want to make that clear.
All right, khair, inshallah.
Yeah. Because yeah. So at any rate, when dealing with this particular discussion, then the thing that we want to look at as pertains to the courtship, there are several things that we want to take a look at. And I guess the first thing that I want to go into will be concerning the guardians. And the reality that is seen that we find guardians who are not directly related to sisters, meaning a sister accepts Islam, she has no family members that are Muslim, so she obtains a guardian. However she obtains a guardian, we find that these types of guardians may not necessarily be fulfilling the duties properly. And in a lot of cases, we almost see the guardians kind of just thumbing off the sisters to anybody as if they don't want to be bothered with the responsibility. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala knows best. What is the first and foremost, when looking at this particular situation, the guardians and the guardianship, what are some of the things that a sister can do to protect herself in that regard as it relates to acquiring a trustworthy, upright guardian who's going to be looking into her best interest? I'm gonna put that out on the floor, and I'll allow whoever wants to take that, to tackle that, inshallah.
تفضل يا عبد السلام.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وبعد. As relates to the guardians and what the sisters should be looking for, firstly, I think we may better understand it by mentioning what they should not be looking for. And that is that there are certain red flags that occur. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that شو اسمه الحاكم الولي لمن لا ولي له أو كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, that the judge or the ruler is the wali for the one who does not have a guardian, right? So for that sister who does not have a guardian that's a relative to hers, then it is traditionally, it's in Islamic Sharia, that the ruler will become her wali, or the one who they appoint, or the one who they appoint. In the lands that are not the Muslim lands, then this will fall to the Marakiz al-Islami. This will fall to the Islamic centers. And then they should get their wali from there. So one of the things that the sisters should not do, and one of the reasons that they fall into, calamity as relates to this particular issue, is because they either one, pick their own wakil, right? Be it their friend's husband or the like, or even worse scenario, they pick a wakil or they have a wakil assigned to them by the brother that they intend on marrying. So his friend becomes her wakil. And that is a situation that spells disaster. And I'll let y'all pick up from that, inshallah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man tamassaka bi sunnatihi ila yawm ad-din wa ba'd. What I can add to that, inshallah ta'ala, is that when choosing a wali, in our, as it relates to our specific situation here in the West, I think one of the biggest mistakes that we make is we can't, like, the criteria that we use to pick a wali is not necessarily based on what's necessary for the job, right? So we may pick a wali because he's a trustworthy brother in the community, or maybe because he's been in the community longer than other people. Sometimes brothers may select a wali for the sister based off the fact that he's a student of knowledge, or so on and so forth, right? And these are not necessarily characteristics, or it's not restricted to those good, because those are all noble qualities, but they may not necessarily be, or that brother may not necessarily have what's necessary to do that particular job, especially with our circumstances right now. Okay, because for example, and we discussed this, we discussed something similar when we, during our conversation regarding the imams and how people, the administrations go about appointing imams and so on and so forth. Have some brothers, mashallah, they tayyibun, good character, they're educated Islamically, but they may lack a life experience necessary to be the imam. We discussed that. So when it comes to the wali, it's a similar issue. When appointing someone to be a wali, and I think it's wise that the imam oversees the wilayah. Like, for example, when I was the imam in the beginning, I used to, I thought I had to do everything. So during that time period, I noticed it was overwhelming. There's a lot of fitna. Your wife is going to get jealous. She's going to get overwhelmed because you have to, you're talking to women. You know what I mean? There's no other way to describe it. I mean, not talking about things that are impermissible or being rude or things like that, but you are going to communicate with women. And a lot of times, when you're dealing with women who may have reverted to Islam and they don't have families, or they don't have any, males from amongst their relatives that are Muslim, that can serve as their guardian and look after them and look after their best interests. By you putting yourself in that position, you by default become a confidant. You become someone that they rely on for different kinds of things. And we've heard stories, and some of us have experienced, where you start off just kind of being a proxy. You're just sitting in for the, based off the fact that she doesn't have a relative. And then now that she's calling you about maybe some advice on an issue that doesn't even have to do with marriage. Mind you, you're in the process of trying to find her a husband, but she starts calling you saying, okay, well, listen, I want to put my son in this school, or my daughter in this school. What's a good school? So you give advice on school. Then it's like, okay, well, I'm thinking about doing this. I'm thinking about doing that. What do you think about that? And it kind of gets, you become almost like a relative, but you're not a relative. So that hurmah that would normally keep you from even thinking anything, or keep the woman from even thinking anything about marriage and so forth, that's not there. So you have a brother in this situation who may not have the time, and in this case, he just doesn't have the discipline. Okay, and it's a very difficult thing to do, because most of them are going to be, for lack of better words, on some level of damsel in distress. It doesn't make a difference if she has her own money. Doesn't make a difference if she's educated, if she's mature. She's a sister and she needs someone to take care of her. Okay. The feminists and all of these crazy women can run around and try to act as if they're independent of men. All they want. Women need men. Okay. And men need women. And we need each other for different things. So if you put yourself in a situation to oversee women, you have to understand that comes with fitna. I don't care how disciplined you are. I don't care how respectful you are. Doesn't mean it comes with lewdness. And that's what people misunderstand. They think that, okay, automatically some lewdness or something inappropriate is going to take place. No, you can be as appropriate and as religiously sound and as developed and mature as you need to be. And there's still going to be, on some level, some kind of fitna. So I think that, my opinion, the smartest thing for the imam to do to protect and safeguard his integrity, because you can be in a situation where you just have a decent character and you're tending to the needs of the sisters. And just the fact that the women appreciate that, when the community finds out that the women really appreciate the kind of man that you are, automatically you're going to get labeled as some kind of guy that is good with the ladies, or whatever it is that people say. And we've seen this with many of the Imam. They have nobody has any negative things that they can honestly say about them, but because of the fact that due to the fact that they're always available and the service to the women, because they have nobody else to service them from amongst their family members. And you think, okay, this is my job to look after the sister because I'm there, I'm her wali, and this one's that wali, and that one's wali. By default, yani people are going to look at you like, okay, he talks to women too much or he's too involved. And you think that. So, many of us learn the hard way thinking that we're running around helping everybody, and it winds up bringing fitna. Your intentions, inshallah, may be pure, but it's not a good thing that I advise the imams to do. What I do advise, however, is that the imams appoint brothers, and this goes back to exactly what we're talking about, or brother who is responsible. It's preferred, in my opinion, that the brother be someone a little older, 25, 26-year-old man. He's not, he hasn't even been alive long enough to know what it's like to gain mastery or control over his desires. He may have abstained for a long time, but to actually gain mastery to a certain level over your desires, that's not really something we see typical in the shabab like that. So we prefer that the brother be a little older, not so old that he's out of touch, or he can't move around, or he may not know what's going on, and so on and so forth, but a little older. Like we look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the other Anbiya and Rasul alayhi wasallam that came before them. We look at the Khulafa al-Rashideen, and so on and so forth. Radiyallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'een. We find that they were men who were, when they became the Khalifa, they were at, in their 40s, and they were at this age of maturity, or above their 40s, excuse me. In the case of like Abu Bakr and Umar radiyallahu anhuma, they were above 60, right? So they were men, they were adults. These people close to the age that the Prophet ﷺ was. So they had that manhood, that life experience. They know, people, even through trial and error, what kind of things you've done in your youth when you were a younger person. So what kind of things maybe to look for in the brother to see if he's developed past certain areas, so on and so forth. So without a doubt, the wali should be a person who understands the Quran and the Sunnah without a doubt. That's, in my opinion, something that's absolutely necessary and condition for imam to appoint someone to be in that position. The person should be a person who's trustworthy, a person who's a member of the community and has clearly shown that he's committed and dedicated to the community, preferably. And he needs to be someone who is a little more mature and has life experience and the personality traits and the discipline necessary to hold that position down. That's just my opinion.
Well, I agree with you. I agree with you in as it relates to the age range, because from my experience and seeing people who are guardians of sisters, I do believe, generally speaking, I've seen elders do a better job. Brothers in their 50s and their 60s, I believe I have. Now, I will say, not all elders did good jobs, but if I really look back at it, I can say the overwhelming majority handled the affair a little bit different than brothers that were younger. So I agree with that 100%. Uh, because one thing that I believe that I see is like a thumb off attitude. So, for instance, um, if it was your daughter, you treat her and her situation with more concern.
Right.
But it's any type of brother comes along, there's no investigating, there's no looking in. Let's be straight up. A lot of times, sisters don't know the right questions to ask, and I'll say this too: brothers don't know the right questions to ask,
Right.
because a lot of times, and I don't want to, because I want to get to the part of the suggestions that could be made to brothers and sisters as it relates to what questions they should ask when they're going through a courtship. So, but I want to deal with this guardianship for 1 second without going into that. I don't want to bounce around. But the point that I'm making is, I believe in a lot of instances, there's a thumb off type attitude, just thumb the girl off or the sister off. The person doesn't really want it would appear that the person doesn't really want the responsibility. And like I said, anybody just comes along. There's no thorough investigating. It's left to the sister to ask her questions to figure out if the person is compatible. The guardian seems like he's just there to be on the phone or however they're communicating, just be there as the chaperone, and then that's that. And oh, so what do you want to do? Oh, you want to marry him? You don't want to marry him? Okay. And then if she decides to marry, then he'll give her away in marriage. Me myself personally, if a sister is dealing with a brother that's like this, that she needs to, if she didn't get acquire her guardian from the masjid, that she needs to go to the masjid and get help.
No,
That would be my suggestion, and Allah knows best.
no, no.
Sticking on this topic and kind of doubling back to something that was mentioned earlier, I think it's imperative that the sisters they really look into the issue and the affair of going back to the masajid to get their wali / wakil, right? Because as aforementioned, as the Prophet he mentioned, he said that as-sultan wali liman la wali lah, right? So there is a protocol in how a wali is chosen, right? Because one of the functionalities of a wali is that they're there to look after the interests of the sisters. So they're there to be almost like an advocate for the sister to make sure that she finds a man that is religious, right? And that they find a man that is compatible, to who that particular person is. And by taking these steps, this helps to ensure good marriages, and this helps to lower the divorce rate. The problem comes when sisters want to take a shortcut, or brothers want to take a shortcut. And like I mentioned, they may have their friend be the sister's wali, right? Or they may just find some random brother who they deem as sensitive and compassionate to whatever it is that they trying to do, right? And so they'll bring that person as to be the wali, and they don't ask anything because they're almost there as a formality. They're just there so I can get you married to my friend, or get you married to this brother that I like a lot, and then that's it. I'm not there to really to look out for you. You know what I mean? I mean, there's situations where people will come and they'll say, "Who's the wali?" Oh, the brother's the wali. And then come to find out the brother never spoke to the sister ever. He was just there for the marriage, and no one even investigates. So we have to become a little more mature, and we can't be as naive because we see these things happening all the time. And usually you hear about the horror stories at the end of the affair, when the marriage is nearing the end, the sister's asking for a khula and all this type of stuff. She's trying to get out, and then all these things start coming to light. Well, how'd y'all get married? Well, I don't even know. I never even spoke to my wali. I was told so-and-so was my wali, and that he married me off. I was sitting in my living room. Next thing I know, they call me saying, "Yeah, you married now." You know what I mean? These things happen, and a lot of women are abused by way of these situations. And you have a lot of predators and men, who are just horrible predators, and they prey on women. You know what I mean? And a lot of times it's because of this. It's because of the lapse in the wali taking their job seriously, right? And they're like, and as communities, we need more help. We need more help, more hands on board. I'm saying to say is that it's unfortunate that in some communities you find a brother who's the wali for everybody in the community. All the new sisters come, he's the wali. He has so many sisters under him. So we have to remember, people are human beings. Some sisters are wonderful to deal with. Some sisters are difficult. They're headaches. I've been the wakil for many sisters over the years, and I'm just being real. Some sisters are headaches. Some sisters make you feel like I can't wait to get rid of her because she's a headache. You understand? And sometimes, people will jump the gun. Anybody come want to marry them? Alhamdulillah, yeah, marry her. You know what I'm saying? But even in those situations, the people have to realize you have to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a responsibility. No matter how annoying or frustrating that sister may be, you still have to look after her best interest. You can't just pass her off to any person, because what's going to happen is that you pass her off to this brother, and then 6 months later, she's going to be back under your guardianship. So what's the point of that? You understand what I'm trying to say? And then now that's another notch in, the marital resume of each one of these individuals. And that's going to make it harder for her to get married in the future. You know what I mean? So if we do our due diligence, this will be better off to serve our communities. And that starts by not just, the imams taking the situation, but seriously, but it has to be follow-up. You check in with the brothers who are in charge of sisters to see, do you have too many sisters? Are you getting burnt out? Who else can help? And the like. And as mentioned, it should be brothers who are older, brothers who are mature, brothers who have their heads on their shoulders. And not for nothing, but we need to start holding workshops. We need to start holding workshops, because although we speak about some of these brothers who are appointed over sisters not doing their job, unfortunately, what I've been seeing, I've ran into a lot of fathers that are not doing their job. A lot of fathers who are just completely pitiful when it comes to this regarding, throw their daughters to the wolves and then complain that she got bit. I mean, Allah musta'an. But anyway.
No, that's a good point too, because just like you see that extreme, we also see the other extreme where brothers step to fathers about their daughters, and these fathers have an attitude like no brother is good enough for his daughter. And so you may have a father, like 20 brothers out of the community that step to him for his daughter at varying different times, and the girl's still not married. None of them were good enough for the father. We've seen that extreme as well, and that's definitely a problem as well.
Indeed. That is true. That is true. Brothers who nobody is good enough, and then they end up hurting their daughters, because now the daughter becomes 30 some odd years old, and she's still not married. 35, you know what I mean? She's still not married. That's horrible. That's a problem, and I don't think anybody will want anyone to interact and treat them in that manner.
Exactly. Now I want to just say, because there are two brothers that are in the waiting room now. For people that are entering the waiting room, for people that want to interact, I would advise that you enter the waiting room now, and then as soon as that portion of the conversation or the discussion starts, I'll automatically just enter people into the chat or to the discussion on a first come first serve basis, so to speak. So I'm paying attention to the waiting room, and so brothers can come in now, and if they want to come in now, and like I said, as soon as we open that up, then you'll be on a first come first serve basis, inshallah. With this said, as it relates to the guardian, I want to move the discussion over to what brothers and sisters should be asking and trying to find out when it comes to the marriage. Now, me, myself personally, a lot of times, because we're dealing with Salafis, brothers and sisters upon the methodology of Ahlul Sunnah. So I think when it comes to brothers need to understand that, generally speaking, if you're dealing with a sister from Ahlul Sunnah, she's generally going to be upon the creed of Ahlul Sunnah. A lot of times, the question is, where is Allah, and other questions of this nation. I'm not saying that those questions are not important, but what I am saying is that if she is a sister within a Salafi community, then it's probably understandable that she's learning the creed that's being taught from that community. And if she doesn't know or understand certain aspects, and she's not going to know everything, then it's upon the brother, if he decides to marry that particular sister, to teach her what she doesn't know. But a lot of times, brothers, their questioning starts and stops there. And there is no real questioning as it relates to the sister and her background, and vice versa. On a sister's end, questioning the brother, asking the right questions as it relates to who he is. Now, me, myself personally, when looking at this particular situation, I definitely believe that sisters and brothers should ask one about the marital experience of each other. For instance, how many times a person has been married. Because unfortunately, we have cases where you have some being married going into the teens, 12, 13, 14, 15 times. And that's a little excessive, and Allah knows best. You definitely want to ask about the medical condition. Is the person taking, does a person have a medical condition that causes them to take some type of medication on an ongoing and chronic basis? This is something that's important for both parties to know. And for when it comes to the women, then this will apply to both men and women. In their family background, has there been some type of abuse? Regardless if the abuse is sexual or physical, and thus forth and so on. Because these types of abuses, this type of abuse, say if we were to say, for instance, sexual, it can leave psychological scars. That although the person may be on their best behavior when they're at the masjid with the brothers, or in the case of the sisters with the sisters, the home life is a different situation. And so these are some questions that me, myself personally, when people come to me asking advice and what they should know and things of that nature, these are at the first, the top of the list as it relates to the questions that they should be asking, especially in our society where, there's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of trauma. Now, somebody was about to say something. I'm not sure which one of the brothers.
Before getting to this, I see our brother or sister Good Day listener. They had a question as relates to the Kitabiyya, that when she goes to get married, basically, and I'm not reading the question, word for word, but basically, who represents her? Is it the Imam? Does the Imam represent her if her family is not there, or what? Meaning the non-Muslimah, who represents her? Okay, so the Kitabiyya, be that the Jewish woman or the Christian woman, as the ulama they mentioned, her representative will be her father or someone from her own religion. That would be her representative, right? So her father, her uncle, whoever from her own religion, they would be her representative, and it wouldn't be the Imam of the masjid in that particular case. On this point, as far as questions, it's important to ask the right questions, right? And it's important to that. I'm getting some feedback. Now, it's important to ask the right questions, and it is important to understand that people typically are going to be on their best behavior. People are going to give you their interview face, right? And we all know the interview face, and they're going to spin things and make it look the best that they can possibly make it look. So, of course, you want to ask those whatever questions that will make you satisfied to know that this person is religious, whatever questions that you want to ask to satisfy your inquiry as relates to the knowledge of this person, their knowledge level, right? So you ask those questions, right? But in that, you have to ask questions that make sense. In other words, don't ask super general questions, because you're going to get a super general answer that may or may not be accurate, that may be extremely misleading. I'll give you an example. People ask questions like, do you like reading? Are you an avid reader? Most people understand that reading is a good thing, and it's a bad thing to say, no, I don't like reading, So let me say, yeah, I love reading. Now, they may not necessarily answer the question directly. Are you an avid reader? Avid reader means you read a lot, right? So they'll answer a question that you didn't ask them. So yeah, I love to read, so you understand from that. Oh yeah, they avid. But does that mean they're reading books? No. A better question to ask, as an example, a better question to ask will be, what book are you currently reading? Who is the author and what is it about? Could you tell me something about it, right? This will get a better gauge, because the same people that you ask, do you love reading? Yes, I'm an avid reader. If you follow it up, okay, what book you currently reading? Who's the author and this and that? Then people start, stuttering and like this. Another thing is getting to people's, they're religious. People may ask, do you pray your sunnah prayers? Right? Good question, right? But it's super general. They're gonna say, yeah. And if they pray their sunnah prayers, ahyanan, occasionally, then they can say, yeah, and they're not lying, right? A better question, right? A more specific question would be to ask an individual, listen, when's the last time you prayed with? And then see what they say. I know one brother, he married his sister, and ended up regretting it. It didn't last. But during the sit down period, they asked the questions. They asked his sister, well, when's the last time you prayed with her? Mind you, this was, months after Ramadan. And her response was, Ramadan. So all these months went by and you haven't prayed with her since Ramadan? That was a red flag that was ignored, and it came back to bite that individual. So anyway, as it relates to the questions, I would say my advice to everyone will be to ask questions that are specific, that will give you good data, good intel. Don't ask questions that are super general, where a person, makes it easy for a person to tell you what they think you want to hear. And Allah knows best. There's more I can mention, but that's what comes to mind offhand right now.
I want to just mention one thing. I think that these are all wonderful, wonderful, wonderful additions and suggestions. And the reality of our situation here in the West is that these things have to be discussed, because we're dealing with a lot of reverts and so on and so forth, right? There's other things besides, because I say so on and so forth because it's not just restricted to reverts. You have Muslim women who, for whatever reason, their families, may not support them in their decision to get married. And I don't want to deviate off the topic, but I believe that this is part of it, because the wali, the reason why the women, if you notice, we're talking about how the women should ask questions and what kind of questions the women should, the men or the women should ask the either the woman or the man, because the walis are failing. Okay, so a lot of the burden is placed upon the woman to try to figure out who this brother is, what kind of person he is, and so on and so forth. And even when it comes to, and when I say walis here, let me clarify, the fathers. Okay, the fathers are, many of the fathers are disgraceful. They're disgraceful. As a wali, they're horrible in that position for so many different reasons. You have because if they did their job, the woman wouldn't have to figure out what kind of brother this is and if he's good for her. If they did their job, then they would know their daughter, and they would know how to sit down with the man who may be interested in their daughter, because the family is a noble family, and the women in the family are known to be righteous and known to be people of good character, right? So when that man or that boy comes to talk to the father would know what kind of daughter he raised, know the kind of principles and values and characteristics that he instilled in his daughters. So when this boy comes, he'll be trying, his goal and his focus will be on trying to make sure that this boy fits his daughters, and that also his daughters fits this boy. But the fathers are horrible, and they're horrible for a number of reasons. Number one, the worst reason of all is a substantial amount of these men don't even make salah. Okay, now, when you look at, and I'm letting you brothers know now I'm not holding any punches, because I've dealt with a lot of different kind of issues. So it's going to be raw for me from this moment on, inshallah ta'ala. Number one, many of the brothers A lot of brothers. I'm talking about Arabs, Pakistanis, Bengalis, Africans. We're not talking about reverts because in my personal, what I've seen, the reverts that are trying to marry their daughters off to brothers, the ones I know are not trying to marry their daughters off to just any old brother, because these are people that just reverted to Islam. They're excited about Islam. They come from a life of kufr and shirk and nonsense. So when Islam hit them, they're very excited and very appreciative because it's new. That's what happens when people first accept Islam. It's new to them and they're excited. They don't have any cultural baggage. They don't have a lot of nonsense. Okay, there's not a lot of foolishness that they have. And a lot of people, specifically in this case, I'm talking about African Americans even more so, because nobody's accepting Islam faster than African Americans in the United States, historically and presently. Nobody's accepting Islam faster than African Americans. So the African Americans that accept Islam and they take it seriously, they're not trying to marry their daughters off just to anybody. They might know exactly what they're doing, but they know for a stone cold fact that they're looking for somebody who's religious, somebody who has characteristics like memorizing the Quran, who has characteristics like yani safeguarding his salah, and so on and so forth. So they may not necessarily know all the economic things. Some of the brothers get excited. Some of the brothers get excited and they just say, oh, mashallah, he's a young student of knowledge, or he loves ilm, or whatever the case is. And then he, just marries his daughter off to a brother, not understanding economics and how important economic stability is. Brothers definitely have made that mistake.
Yeah, because that would be a failure on the father, though.
A tremendous failure.
Yeah. Because that's one of the. But this is why I was. I don't mean. Let me just come in for a second, and I'll let you finish your point. But this is what I mean. This is what I mean when I said when I talked about asking. Like I give. Simply put, if you're on a sit down, you as a man are on a sit down, and the only questions you're asking are religious questions,
right,
then you're probably hurting yourself.
Absolutely.
Because the reason why I say strictly religious questions and nothing else, like some of the examples that our brother Sadiq gave,
right,
and there's nothing else outside of that that's being asked.
Right.
As it relates to the akhlaq of the woman, as it relates to the family background of the woman, as it relates to some of the things that the health of the woman, and thus forth and so on, you're probably setting yourself up for defeat. And that could be said of the woman too. If she's only asking about, do you have a beard, and and thus forth and so on. How often do you go to the classes, the weekly classes, and
right,
thus forth and so on. And that's all she asks about. And she's setting herself up she's probably setting herself up. And that is a fault of the guardian for not stepping in and understanding that, look, these two people, one, have to be compatible, and there can't be some unforeseen baggage that prevents the marriage from being successful.
Right. No.
And if there is, the sister or the brother has to know, and advice needs to be given to them. Like, listen, if you go into this situation, most likely you're going to be dealing with this.
Right.
And one thing I want to say is that I'm going back to the guardian, because this whole topic of the courtship, a lot of the problems comes from the guardian, right? Yeah. Don't get me wrong, there are problems on both sides, right? So I know my brother Najeeb mentioned you got some people been married in the teens. So anybody been married, 14, 15, 16 times, then it's safe to say at some level and at some point, people change, people get better. But at some level, at some point, maybe the problem is you know what I mean? And you got to really look at yourself and invest, into yourself and make yourself better, so that, you don't have so many more. But in any event, the guardians, we're talking about questions, right? The guardians, they have to understand, and they have to be mature enough to realize the sensitivity of the situation, and also how individuals are nervous, in the sense that when you approach a situation, you're going to have a sit down to marry this particular sister, right? You're nervous. So there may be some questions that you just forgot to ask because your nerves got the better of you, right? There may be some things that slip your mind and that it don't come to your mind because you're nervous. You're super nervous. You're trying to put on your best face and, so on and so forth, right? So you do have this as an issue. This is where the guardian's maturity, right, and the guardian's care and concern comes into play, because that guardian, he's the one that's supposed to have a list of questions all of his own, where he has already screened this woman to get a pretty good idea of what type of person she is, right? And also will have an ongoing list of questions based upon what is being mentioned, where he would cut in and he will butt in and he will ask those questions that they are not asking, but that should be asked, right? Because, for example, like the brother mentioned, if you ask a person, do you have any ongoing medical issues? And that person says, yes, I have some ongoing medical issues, and I, take, I've been prescribed a certain amount of drugs, right? Prescriptions. The guardian, if the person doesn't ask, the guardian should ask, give me the names of these drugs. What are the names of these drugs, right? I want you to send me a name of all these drugs that you take, and then you consult with the medical professionals inside of your community, right? To see what are these drugs for? Because when it comes to underlying issues, we know that there are certain HIV medication right now that will bring a person to is undetectable. So even if they get a test for AIDS, it's not going to come up that they're HIV positive because they're on this regimen of drugs. So if a person is on these type of drugs, it's important to know what these drugs are. So it's not enough to say, yes, the doctor had prescribed me a certain amount of drugs. No, what's the name of those drugs? I need you to send me your list of the name of those drugs. Now, we ain't talking about, look, send me your list of the name of those drugs. I need to see what they are and what are they for. Maybe certain drugs a person is taking that's there to balance their mental chemistry. So that means that this person may be suffering from depression, this person may be bipolar, this person. It's important for a person to know that you're marrying a person who has these issues. You're marrying a person who, if they don't take their medicine, they might flip out on you, might have a manic episode, so on and so forth. That's important to know beforehand, so that person knows exactly what they're getting into. So my point is that the guardians, yes, a lot of the high divorce rates that we have going on in our communities is linked back to the guardian. The people themselves, yes, the potential grooms and brides themselves, yes, them too. But the guardian, you're there as that impartial person that's looking from the outside. You're there as that person who is not emotionally invested, in a sense where your emotions now are starting to cloud you. You're there to make sure and to see that this man is good for this woman, that this is the right match. And sometimes it can be people that's righteous. But if you know that this sister is an introvert, for example, then you're not going to marry her to the most outgoing person in the community, because you know that's going to be a conflict. And that's just an example, right? But the point is that the guardians got to step up, and the fathers got to step up, and the fathers got to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they got to stop, acting whack and soft when it comes to these issues.
See, the reason why this discussion and this concept is so complicated is because, the father and anyone who's blood related to the girl and the brother who steps in are two different people, as we already know. So, and then you look at the fact that we have, we're not coming from that community structure, right? Where you have a village and everybody in the village kind of knows each other and they grow up together. And so your mother knew this little girl since she was born, and your father knew this boy since he was little. We're not growing up like that. So we have all of these complicated circumstances, like all of these things that were mentioned. People, and this is why it's just such a delicate and at the same time intricate and complicated situation, is because there's no one way just to handle the situation. There is no one way just to do this, because everybody's coming from different backgrounds. If you have two brothers, like for example, and this is why I said the walis, many of the fathers who are guardians of their daughters, I'm not saying they're horrible people, to be clear, but when it comes to the wilaya and how they marry their daughters off, many of them are horrible at their job because they're not using, first of all, a lot of the brothers are not using Islam. They're not using the Quran. They're not using the Sunnah. They don't even understand the Quran and the Sunnah, many of them. So that's not even a criteria. That's not a criteria, okay? Things like having a discussion. The girl, in my opinion, the women have to, like if the walis step up, if the father handles the job, because nobody from a Muslim country is gonna, on average, you're not gonna sit down with a girl from a Muslim country and they have traditional Islamic and foreign values, Middle Eastern values, African values, places that are abroad. You're not gonna sit down and ask her all of these questions and talk to her and ask if she's on medication or if she's suffering from depression. You're not really gonna get an opportunity to do none of that on average. The father, first of all, a lot of those issues people don't even have on the same level as we have them here in the West. They have them, but not on the same level that we have here in the West. Some of them they do, but not all of them. Molestation, a lot that's going on, but everybody doesn't have the same. You have to ask a woman, how many men have you been with? When did you accept Islam? Have you ever been, involved in this, more involved in that? Or ask the brother, or do you have any gang affiliation? Have you ever been incarcerated? Those aren't really questions that come up, we know, abroad. Those are homegrown questions that are germane to our circumstances here in the West, right? But if you look at the fathers, for example, many of them are not even looking at a person's religious character. And even if they do, they're not judging it based off the Quran and the Sunnah and the fahm of the Salaf of this Ummah. They're judging them based off of something else. Whatever he understands Islam to be, and whatever he understands a religious person, a righteous person to be, then he looks at him based off of that. And the person may not have this quality. Then you have to look at the fact that, as you mentioned, the finances. Okay, I don't think that a lot of the brothers, and again, that's something that's different from, we have our own situation here that's germane to us in the United States. Many of the reverts are not looking at money. They on a religious high, and they just look at the brother who, mashallah, he has a thawb on, he has a beard, he has good character. He doesn't have any knowledge of economics. He doesn't have any plan. He doesn't have, even if he has an education, he doesn't know what to do with his money, doesn't know how to do anything economic. So unless you're going to be involved and help, take this young man under the wing, then you might put your daughter in a difficult situation. So the brother will marry the brother. A lot of reverts will marry their daughters off to a brother just because he's religious, okay? And then the other brothers from other countries, the fathers, then a lot of them, from my personal experience, they're not looking at, is he Salaf, is Aqidah Sahiha? They're looking at, is he from my tribe? Is he from my same country? Is he this? One brother told me, one time there was a brother who was interested in his sister. He thought he liked the brother's character, so he wanted the brother to, potentially marry his sister. So he approached the brother and he asked. So the brother said, well, he said, I would love to entertain it, but my family would never accept it because we're considered Sayyid. That's what he said. Okay, brother in Pakistan. He said, we're considered Sayyid. And so I said, what's that? He said, well, we're kind of like so many words like upper class or royalty, or we're like exclusive group of people in my village or in my area. He said, I mean, to such an extent, when we come in the room, if one of us comes in the room and we're sitting on the couch, you're not even allowed. This is what he told me. I'm not making this stuff. He told me, he said, if I sit on the couch, other people have to sit on the floor because of my social status within my village. Now, when you have a father who's so twisted and shut out that he's actually going to forget about religion and mental health and physical health and compatibility and all these other kind of things, right, are not even an option. Economics, not even really an option. The most important thing to me is that you're a Sayyid, that you come from whatever bloodline that you come from. Okay, so you have that. You have brothers, right? You have there's many sisters in the United States. Now me, like one time Sheikh Muhammad bin Salih al-Uthaymeen, rahimahullah, and we don't have time, of course, to go into the whole mas'ala, but the Sheikh mentioned that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we know the hadith, mentioned that that deciding factor that separates us from the mushrikeen is the salah, right? وَمَنْ تَرَكَهَا فَقَدْ كَفَرَ. And anybody who abandoned that salah has left his disbelief. So we know that this is an area of ikhtilaf among some of the Ahl al-Ilm. But like Sheikh bin Baz and Sheikh Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymeen, rahimahullah ta'ala, with Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan, hafidhullah, ulama like them, and I agree with them, that's my view as well. When a person stops making salah, especially when he just does it like just, I don't care, I don't see that. I would never make salah for the janazah over that person. And Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah mentioned some of the things that are impermissible to do, or that person is prohibited from doing because of him abandoning the salah and abandoning his religion. And one of the things that he mentioned was that it's impermissible in the fuqaha for that person to be a wali over a girl. We don't have any dalil with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam after the wahi came to him and after salah was wajib upon him, where he allowed a person who's on kufr and shirk or apostasy to be a wali over a girl. You know how many walis are marrying women off and the brother don't even make salah? Or excuse me, the man doesn't even make salah? Tons. I know tons of people that don't pray, but they're marrying their daughters off. And I'm calling some of the Ahlul Ilm, they're saying that those marriages are marriages of zina. So that's how bad the wali situation is, that you have brothers, you have men who are marrying their daughters off and they don't even pray. So, we know if this man, he doesn't even make salah, he's not going to be asking questions about, this or that, or any of these relative things, these things that are necessary. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's just trying to figure out if he can find somebody from his tribe. I've seen people marry their daughters off to people who get high, people who drink. People come to my office smelling like cigarettes, looking dirty. And I used to be in the shit. I used to hustle. So I know what a fiend look like and smell like. I can spot a fiend in the group. So I know what a fiend look like. I'm from Patterson. I can spot a drug addict a mile away. People come to my office looking like they're on drugs. And he trying to marry this man, his virgin daughter. Okay, so the walis, many of them are horrible. Many of them are racist. And I don't mean racist like, oh, we just trying to play. No. I mean like actually use words like nigger and all these other kind of words. I've experienced all kinds of crazy, not from words, we're not talking about from hearsay. I'm talking about stuff that I've seen with mushahada, with me actually watching it and hearing it with my ears, being in meetings and sitting down with people, talking to people on the phone and hearing the things that come out of some of these people's mouths. So the fathers many of them have no clue what they're doing. You're dealing with false marriages. We're talking about, because what we're talking about, the questions and so on and so forth, that's a whole different group. All right. And I think that we need to not allow ourselves to get sidetracked, because there's a lot of women from other countries that are here in America. And because the imams of the masajid in many of the communities that were, founded by brothers who come from abroad, again, or the Muslim countries, and they come here and they establish a masjid, the girls are suffering from an entirely different thing. They're being forced to marry people they don't want to marry. Period. Like people that have I'm talking about, not they don't want to marry them because the girl is loose and she wants to go outside and live her life. She wants to marry somebody that's religious. And the father's like, nope, you're going to marry this person. Father don't
that happened with me. There was a brother, Salafi brothers from Somalia. Right. He wanted me to marry his sister. He told me it was going to be a big problem. Yeah. He wanted me to marry his sister. He approached me about it. Right. And he told me it's going to be a big problem though with his father. Yeah. And so I had another situation that I was looking into. So I just basically declined the offer. But he did make mention that it was going to be some issues.
Oh yeah, man. Wallahi, man. We have, I've been called a nigger before by somebody when I inquired. You know what I'm saying?
But hold that thought. We got two people waiting in the waiting room. Since there's only two people in the waiting room, I want to bring them in and then we go back to the discussion. So I'll bring them in one at a time, inshallah. Okay. And so a brother's being admitted now. So I guess it's going to take a second for his audio and his video to synchronize, inshallah. But yeah, so that's definitely an issue. Like I said, but I guess with me, I was speaking more along the lines of of homegrown issues, especially considering the fact that most of the masajid that I have participated in, the predominant attendees were usually Black American. Now, you would have other ethnic groups, but they weren't of large numbers. Where one, they weren't of very like say for instance L.A. There's a when you come to when you a Mashal movement, when you go to Jumu'ah, you see a lot of different people, but they weren't there. Those all those different types of people weren't there on a day to day. You know, the masjid itself was run by Black Americans. The majority of the people that lived in the community were Black American. Yeah, you had some people here and there that were outside of that, but for the most part, it was like that. And so, um, so that these are the type of issues I would see more so. Same thing like when I was in Montgomery, Alabama. There was a lot of different ethnicities that were there, but the core brothers that were there on a day-to-day basis seemed to be Black American, with some exceptions, but they were a minority, not the majority.
See, my experience, the community that I was in, I had a few cases with people that were reverts and Black Americans. The majority of my experience as an imam dealing with these kinds of issues, have been, I'm not even gonna say the majority, I'll say maybe half 50-50, because there were people from all different parts of the world and they have all different kinds of issues. And there's a community here in the United States that's being forgotten about. Okay, so when you look at our circumstances and the things we have to deal with, yes, we have to now try to figure out a way to compensate for the fact that we don't have, like that community structure. Okay, we don't have villages. Our mothers and our fathers and grandmothers and aunts and uncles are not growing up watching people, or not watching other people grow up, I should say, and knowing, okay, what family is what and who's who and what the children experience growing up on, oh, that's little so-and-so who used to do such and such. We don't have that. So we have to compensate for that, right? People reverting to Islam, they don't have fathers, they don't have Muslim parents. So we have to compensate for that, right? When a girl gets divorced, after she gets divorced, what happens to her? In the Muslim lands, alhamdulillah, what's traditional is that the girl gets divorced, she goes back to the home of her family. And now her family takes care of her. And nowadays in the West here, when the revert girls accept Islam, and then they wind up getting married and they get divorced, a lot of them, if they're not strong, right? And this is a whole nother topic or part of discussion. Perhaps later on we'll have time to discuss that, inshallah. How to approach, how should divorced Muslim revert women specifically, or even women that were born and raised in Muslim families whose family abandoned them for whatever reason. When they're divorced, what's the role and responsibility of the community in trying to keep them, stabilized and cared for? Because a lot of
I don't know if I told you when I initially talked to you about doing this, but I want to make this an ongoing series, because I know when dealing with affairs of marriage, we're not going to be able to touch on everything.
Yeah,
that's why I was trying to leave this specifically focused on the courtship for now.
Right.
And then maybe next week we can deal with another aspect that we agree upon, and like this. Real quick, Abu Raja, you're in the discussion. Unmute yourself so we can hear what you're muted though. So I don't know if you're talking or not, but unmute yourself and you can either ask your question or make your comment, and thus forth and so on.
No.
I don't know what's going on with this brother. I'm not sure if he's paying attention or what, but I'm going to probably send him back to the waiting room, right? And bring in the other person that's currently in the waiting room.
No.
Okay, looks like he left. Okay. So it looks like he left the waiting room. All right. And I guess it takes some time for people's audios to synchronize. And this person left. Maybe people didn't expect that they were going to be brought in, right? Because it appears this person left the. Yeah. So anyway, let's continue, inshallah.
Well, now they know. So if you hit the link, inshallah ta'ala, we're gonna bring you on. So be prepared, you know what I mean?
At any rate, when dealing with this particular issue, like I said, when the whole marriage situation in general is just very vast, and I think that the courtship aspect of the marriage, without a doubt, is very important because it's the initiation. It's the initiation process, and so people have to just ensure that they're handling the situation properly. Now, I want to switch to that deals with the topic. What are the brothers' opinions as it relates to people marrying within their community? And what I mean by that is that if you're in Florida and you try to marry somebody in LA, quite naturally, it's going to be more difficult for you to investigate who that person in LA is because you're not from LA, you may not know the community, and you have literally no background on the person. And I think this is another mistake that I mainly see sisters make, is that they ask for references. So they have a brother that they don't know. They have a brother that they don't know that they're courting for marriage. And then they ask that brother to give references. And then he gives references of a bunch of other brothers that she doesn't know. And she takes those references and maybe the wakil, whoever investigates, and they are literally taking the word of people that are unknown to them about this other brother that's unknown. And so when looking at, this is the point that I'm making, like when looking at the situation, is it better for a sister and or brother to first look for suitable people within their own community?
I believe it is.
I think it would be, but I'd like to hear the brother's perspective.
See, here's the thing. I believe it's better to find somebody locally, right? And that's ideal. So under ideal circumstances, it's better to find someone locally because you can better investigate that particular person, right? You can see what masjid that person goes to, how much they frequent that masjid. In other words, a lot of questions that we ask during the sit-down phase, you wouldn't have to ask because you will be familiar with that person's goings and that person's comings, right? However, this is the ideal situation, yes. However, the reality of the affair is that our circumstance is so complex and we have so many complex and compounded issues that a lot of times that is just not the practical solution, because a person may be in a place where there may not be a lot of people who are available, right? And that could be for a number of reasons. From those reasons, it may be just because they live in a place where the Muslims are an extreme minority, where they're just literally not a lot of people around, not a lot of options available. And that's unfortunate. So of course, they may have to look outside of their towns to find somebody suitable. Then you have other situations that, like for example, what our brother Ismaili mentioned, where you might have a situation where you're in a masjid that is predominantly of other ethnicities that you don't belong to, right? And because of the racism that exists amongst the Muslims, you have no options. Why? Because nobody's going to marry their daughter to you. or because no one is going to, none of the men are going to marry this particular sister because she don't have the complexion for the connection. She's not from their people. She's not from their tribe, so on and so forth, right? So for them, they have no choice but to go outside to get married, because literally most of the people that stand next to them day in and day out in the masjid, they cool enough for that, but they're not cool enough to marry. You understand what I'm saying? So you have that dynamic, which is sad, which is a whole nother issue within itself. It's a whole nother problem that makes, this already problem of finding good people even harder, but nonetheless, it exists. So you have sometimes situations where it becomes hard to find somebody in your local area, which makes the task even more so cumbersome. And this is why the investigation is very important. I mean, listen, if the person is from your community, right, you still have to investigate. You still have to do your due diligence. And some of the ulama they mentioned is that where they don't advise that you prolong the engagement, or quote unquote, or you prolong that time where a person is intended to marry someone. You don't prolong that time, right? They don't advise that you prolong it. However, they do advise that you take enough time to do your due diligence. Don't rush it. You understand? Not 2 weeks of talking and then, okay, now I'm ready. A month of talking, okay, yeah, now I'm ready. No, you take the time that's needed so that you can make sure that this person is suitable. Why? Because you have to go into this situation with the mentality of, I want to marry this person until one of us passes away. You have to go into this with the mentality of, I want to have a successful marriage. I want to have a marriage that lasts for, until Allah Ta'ala decrees one of us to die, basically, right? And the way you do that is by doing your due diligence. The way you're doing that is by trying to minimize the surprises, right? Because you don't want to marry a sister, or a sister don't want to marry a brother, and then a weekend you start learning all of this stuff that, had you known prior, you may have chosen differently. You understand? And this is because of a bad investigation. So it's important that you have to do your investigation. And the investigation becomes even more so important when you're forced to go outside your area, because the people around you are just not willing to marry you, or there's no one around you. There's very few people around you, that are potential suitors and to marry. So with regards to the racism issue, well, that has to be tackled. That's a problem that has to be tackled. And that's a problem that, bidnillahi ta'ala, things could get a little better, inshallah, but that's something that has to be tackled. But also on that issue, right, I advise the brothers and I advise the sisters that in general, when you go to marry a person, you just don't investigate that person, but you also have to investigate the family. Why? Because you're going to be married into the family. So in the case of the racist person or the racist family, the person that you marry may not be racist, but the extended family is racist. So you're going to have to deal with a bunch of racist individuals. Your children are going to be subjected to deal with a bunch of racist individuals, right? Now, I've known people that have marriages where they have married outside their ethnicity. And I'm talking in particular about African Americans, right? I know African Americans that have married people who were not African American and were not classified or considered Black. Okay. And you have race, and then they'll have children. And then you have racist family members that will come in and will ask, why is the baby so dark? What? That's the type of question you want to ask. Now you have to know yourself, know what you can and can't handle, and so on and so forth. Because if you're the type of person that, if somebody, for example, were to ask a question like that, when you had an iftar during Ramadan and you know yourself as a person, let somebody speak to my child like that, I'm gonna ruin this whole event. You follow what I'm saying? If you know that that's the type of person you are, then you have to reconsider marrying a person who has a racist family. If you know you can't deal with racist people and you have a very short fuse when it comes to racist people. Not saying the sister was bad, not saying the brother was bad, but you know yourself. If you know you can't deal with that family, then don't marry into that family. If you know that it's a family who Yani, it's a bad family, right? It's a family where the father was missing. So now you have a man trying to, a son, you know, that father's son who grew up with yani, in a house without his father. Now he wants to marry your daughter. You have to understand that this boy, he don't know how to be a husband. Why? He never had an example. His father was absent. How does he know how to be a husband? He don't know how to be no husband. If you have a woman who is coming from a family where her mother was a bad mother, she didn't cook, she didn't clean, you know, she didn't really take care of the children. She was more worried about herself and what was going on with her. She didn't worry about taking care of her kids and so on and so forth. And this person survived growing up with that bad mother. This woman, you have to anticipate and expect she don't know how to be a wife. She don't know how to be a good mother because she didn't have an example. And if you marry her thinking that, you know, she is going to be a good mother, even after looking at all this situation, and it turns out that she's not a good mother, she's a bad mother, right? Then that's your fault. That's your fault. So the investigation has to extend not just the person, but you also got to check out the family. What kind of family am I going to have to deal with? And are these the type of people I can deal with? And do not allow the beauty of the sister or how handsome the brother is to confuse you and to trick you into thinking, no, I can deal with it. You have to be honest with yourself and you have to recognize what you can and can't deal with. And Allah knows best.
Yeah, as it relates to the racist family, I know about situations where the marriages failed on account of things of that nature. After a while, it's just too much having to tolerate that type of behavior. Me myself personally, I wouldn't advise anybody to entertain that because
Oh, me neither.
that's an unnecessary baggage that a person just shouldn't have to put up with. Period.
No, that's right.
Um,
And
you
like I
know,
said, a person got to know themselves. You know, I'm not coming to try to come across like I'm holding it down and stuff like that. I have a very short fuse when it comes to racist people. I won't be able to deal with no family like that. You know what I mean?
Let me
Um,
just add one little thing. You know what's crazy? And see this topic, man, is brothers, excuse me, man. I get real excited over this one because this is one of the biggest things I had to deal with during my time as the imam. This is in my opinion, this was the hardest thing I had to deal with. Like I don't even have the self-control. It's really difficult for me to stay like within the margins of this discussion and do it systemically. So forgive me if I have outbursts or it seems like I'm going over the top or getting off topic. But the racism thing and the prejudice thing, because the thing that bugs me out, and I don't want to make it about racism, we need to have a forum just on that. You know what I mean? I don't know. I might have to take like a sedative or something before we get on that topic. Because that really, but the thing, this is what bugs me out, right? Because you're in a masjid. Now, you have brothers who they sitting there, they don't know how to make salah properly. So you're teaching the salah of the Prophet. Some of the brothers. You're right. They don't know how, really the way nikah is supposed to go according to the sunnah. So you got to educate them on nikah, how it's supposed to go according to the sunnah. If they need a divorce or khula or anything, they don't know any of these things. If they go hajj, many of these brothers, you have to take them on hajj and show them how to make the hajj. They're coming up to you. What do we do in Muzdalifah? What do we do in Mina? What do we do? We go make tawaf. They don't know any of these things. They're coming to you, all these things. Then when it's time for somebody to marry their daughter, and we're not talking about, just, and I'm not trying to downplay any of the brothers, but we're talking about upright. I know brothers who are in the community who were, leaders, young men who were leaders in the Quran program. They were the strongest in terms of memory, best in terms of character, most dedicated. Everybody loves them. Those brothers would get shot down. Like they wouldn't even be considered. They'll marry their daughters off to somebody they don't even know, like never even met the person at all, but because the person, is a particular complexion or something like that. And I mean, to see that kind of energy, to experience that, and to watch people have put that much into racism, you know what I mean? It bugs you out.
especially being like, you know, us, it's like, man, you know, all of these liberties, America wasn't always like this. You know what I'm trying to say? Like our ancestors were getting hanged from trees and bleeding, getting killed, and all the rape. And that kind of, you know, disgusting, filthy oppression, when that spread throughout the world and politicians saw it in their best interest to make that a humanitarian issue, a global humanitarian issue, bring global attention to that issue, and now, you know, make it look like this is their concern, and, you know, come with all these civil rights act and change America from the crazy place that it was at one time to, I mean, we still got a lot of issues, but, you know, to remove blatant racism, where you could just come, you know, in the White House or in some, you know, federal building and just start calling, you know, black people all kinds of nasty names and making them use certain bathrooms and drink out of certain water fountains. And it was not permissible or against the law to look Caucasians in the eyes. So when all of that stuff started to get eradicated and was considered not politically correct, and then it's really started to become, you know, a place where people could come and live and not have to deal with that as blatantly. How do you look at the people who come from a succession and a line of people who made this necessary sacrifices so that you all could come here and benefit, and now you think you're better than them? Like that, me, I'm saying me personally, right? As a black man, when I look at somebody look at me, I'm like, bro, you actually came over here illegally. Some of y'all ran from immigration to do all that to be here. My ancestors got drug here against their own will. That's just my own personal thing. I don't get it, because it's like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us in shu'ub and qaba'il for what? Ta'aruf, so we can learn each other, get to know one another, and benefit from one another. So now you actually came over here, benefited from the efforts and the works that my ancestors put into this ground, into this soil, right? And now I'm not good enough. My people are not good enough. Like, for, you know what I mean? And that stuff. And again, it's not like, you know, don't get it twisted. I don't want people to think that we have any obsession. I'm not obsessed with nobody's nationality. I don't care nobody hair, skin complexion, what language they speak. I'm not obsessed with anybody. And I don't feel like, oh, I got to have somebody. I love black women. I love women, period. So it has nothing to do with me or any of the brothers that I know personally feeling like, oh, we got to get something outside of our own nationality. You're looking for people with good character and good deen. So if somebody has good character and good deen, and you think that this woman tunasibuk, it doesn't really make a difference what her nationality is. There's some perks to marrying people from whatever nationality they come from. But that's not why you're marrying them. You're marrying them because you see, yeah, if a person understands Islam, you're trying to marry this girl because you see her to be a good person, regardless what her nationality is. So for someone now to shoot you down because of your skin complexion, and I don't know too many people, in my opinion, in my experience, the time I spent as the imam, the number one person, the number one, I've actually, I know people who said, right, and this is why I'm so, you brothers got to, you know, maybe you might want to reconsider bringing me on a forum like this in the future, because it's very difficult for me to control myself with this topic. But I know of somebody who actually said out of their mouth. I know more than one person. A brother told me his wife said this. Okay, brother told me to my face, his wife said, and then laughed afterwards. I know more than one person who said, my kids can marry anybody they want, but they better not bring nobody black in here. I don't care who it is, but they better not be black, right? They'll start with their own nationality, and then the daughter doesn't, or the son doesn't want to marry within the nationality, then they'll go to the next closest nationality, and so on and so forth. But when you get to black people, it's not even an option. So, you know, this kind of stuff, man, like, how's the community going to grow? How are we going to develop? How are we going to build anything? You understand what I'm trying to say? Because you have a group of brothers here that reverted to Islam 20 years ago. Some of them memorized the Quran, excellent character, well established financially, don't have any illnesses or ailments, no mental health issues, nothing. Pillars of the community, everybody. They're known, some of them are known internationally. They know ulama, but he's not good enough. But this guy over here who smokes cigarettes and come to the masjid smelling like liquor sometimes, he can marry a daughter because he's from. When you have stuff like that in the community, and you have fathers co-signing this nonsense and marrying their daughters with this kind of methodology, there's going to be, we can't think that we're going to have success here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because unfortunately, when you have people with mentalities like that, it's probably very little that you can do to even change them anyway.
Exactly. So you'll find like what Sadiq mentioned, you'll have brothers in the community. I've seen brothers in the community that I just left. And they would brothers were like going 2 years without a wife. Then you have brothers, mashallah, strong Salafi brothers trying to hold it together. Then they start breaking down. Now they on lookformuslimwife.com or whatever these websites are. So that you're on the website. Those websites get weird, man. They're on the website now. They're looking for this wife, or they're trying to go overseas and marry a woman, and they get married to the woman, and they can't, the long distance relationship is not working out. She can't come to United States. It just gets real, real weird. Meanwhile, you got a whole masjid full of people. It has nothing to do with the brothers being obsessed or having a desire to marry someone outside of their nationality. You're in a community full of people from other countries. That's where you accepted Islam. You live here. These are the only people.
Yeah, but that's what I was saying. Like, it's probably better for people to start looking for a wife within their community for varying reasons that are beneficial for the two that are going into marriage. One is because everybody basically knows everybody.
Yeah.
And you can get a clear background on the person that you're trying to marry. It's not difficult. Even people coming from other countries, because it's like I said, if I go back to Mashallah movement in LA, I know brothers that married sisters that were of other ethnicities, but they were in the community.
Right.
They were active participants in the community.
Right.
And I will say this too, for the most part, those types of marriages have lasted for the most part. Now you always have exceptions here and there, but yani al-hukm al-ghalib, as the principle goes, the ruling is based off what is predominantly occurring, not the minority. All right. So that's why first and foremost I would I think it's a problem when you have, because I started to see this wave in LA where the younger sisters were looking at the very men in their community like mud, and then like there's gold, going out trying to find somebody else who you don't know, who you have to try and figure out who they are.
Right.
And everybody that was within, I remember the Gambian brothers were staunch on that. I remember American brother married his daughter to somebody that wasn't from the community. And so even again, the Gambian brothers, like, they were like, who you guys know who it was he married his daughter to? Why didn't he get somebody from the community? Everybody knows the person. You can vouch for him. That and that's for so on. It just makes more sense. But that goes into another issue. The issue of ageism, because we have a situation where you may have a brother who's older, maybe in his 40s, maybe in his 50s, and he may be marrying a sister in 20s or 30s. In some communities, people won't, or some people within communities won't have a problem with it. They look at the Prophet ﷺ and Aisha, and then you look at other people and they'll say, well, he's not the Prophet and that's not Aisha. And they have a problem with this type of marriage occurring. What are you guys' thoughts on this type of situation?
I mean, I think when it comes to younger sisters marrying older brothers, a lot of times, because of the society that we live in, they're a little more averse to the idea, right? But a lot of times you find that the brothers, once they reach a certain age of maturity, then they're they're more equipped and they're better capable of maintaining a wife, and they're a little more emotionally mature, so they know how to interact and to deal with a wife. Right now, there are many different dynamics to this, of course, and of course, every demographic will have issues that are particular to it. Right. So it's a very complicated issue. Right. It's a very complicated issue. But also, if I can add to that, something else I think some sisters need to consider are those older brothers, and generally the older brothers who are good brothers are currently married, right? So that's something that they also should consider as somebody who is currently married. And the reason I say that is because, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've seen is that typically when you have the ages from, I would say, about mid 30s to mid 50s, right? And give or take, typically the brothers who are single in that age range is for good reason, right? It's for good reason. And that's typically because they're a bunch of knuckleheads. They've been married about 18, 19 times, maybe exaggeration, but they've been married a lot, knuckleheads, and they play around. They're not serious about anything, right? So you got to be very careful. Now, of course, once you go beyond that age, now you start getting into the age range where people become widowers. So you may find a brother in that age range that's a good brother who doesn't have any wife because his wife passed away. So you find a lot of good brothers once you start to get above that age range. But you have to be very careful. You have to be very careful. You're not all 40-year-olds are the same. I know some 40-year-old knuckleheads that I wouldn't marry nobody to, period. I wouldn't even perform the wedding. I would advise a sister, don't even marry him, because they're just, they're kind of brother that in the past year have been married 2-3 times in the past year, past 12 months. You know what I mean? But anyway, sisters have to start perhaps considering brothers who are older, who have good character, and brothers who are already married, because one thing that will show you is that they know how to maintain a marriage. If they've been married for the past 15, 20 some odd years, they know how to maintain a marriage. But sisters themselves have to be mature enough to understand the situation. One, they have to be mature enough to know that this brother who's looking to get married, he's not playing around with it. He's not dipping his toe in the water of polygyny to see if he, how it is for him. Because those brothers will end up divorcing that sister real fast when the first wife start giving him too much static, and they'll let her go real fast. So you got to make sure it's not a brother who's playing around with it and experimenting, but this is a brother who's serious. Once they have ascertained, okay, this is a brother who's serious, then they have to be mature enough to know that because this brother has been married for 15, 20 years, 25 years, and so on and so forth, this is not an intimidating factor, because you're not coming in to replace his first wife, but you're coming in to add value to the overall family. You understand what I mean? And as long as they have their head on right and the brother has his head on right, a lot of times that's a way better situation for them, because this person is going to be mature. This person is going to know how to interact with them. This person has experience on how to deal with a wife. This person has many years of experience of being a husband. This person has years of experience of being a father. You know what I mean? And this will benefit that woman. And typically men around this age range, they're more financially stable. So this is a brother who will be able to take care of her, and to really treat her in a very good way. But she has to be mature enough to know herself, and she has to be mature enough to know what she's looking for, and to really go after. And I'm saying she has to be mature enough. Not saying that she should go out, get on dating, websites and then do the investigating herself. No, but she has to know how the investigation should go, so that if she runs into one of these pitiful wakils, you understand, then she knows what he's not doing. She knows where he's falling short, so that she
One
needs
second,
to.
Sadiq. 1 second.
Nah.
Abu Abdurrahman al-Uqayli, come in and ask the brother what he meant. Just ask the brother. The link is there. You can enter the discussion. You can ask the brother yourself what he meant. I'm just now seeing the message. It looks like it says 2 of your messages are retracted, but I see the brother's statement after that. that you may be misunderstanding what the brother said and intended. The link to the weight room is there. I'll post it again right now so that you can see it, and you can enter and ask the brother yourself what he meant. The only thing that I would ask is that if you come in with some adab,
Who's he talking
come in
about?
with some adab, but you
Yeah,
can
I
ask
missed
the
it.
brother yourself.
What's he talking about?
Nobody's adverse to explaining themselves, and that's what for so on. This is what the chat. This is what the chat is for. The chat is clearly for anybody that has any questions, anybody that has any concerns, anybody that has a difference of opinion as it relates to something that we said. We welcome the discussion.
Right.
We welcome the
What what
discussion.
what was his concern to
I
what
don't know, man.
statement?
I don't know. He would have to explain it. I don't know what his concern is.
What
For
can we
him
see
to come
in
and
the chat?
explain it. I can't speak for this man. But anyway,
Got you.
continue what you were saying.
What was the statement?
Yeah,
I don't know. He deleted
I
the
don't
thing,
know.
so somebody else responded to it. I didn't see what was deleted. So that's why I'm basically saying the brother himself could come in and ask the question. He can.
Right.
Nobody lahu lisan. Nobody else can speak for him anyway. But basically what I'm saying is if there's a misunderstanding, I'm not sure who he's misunderstanding now. I'm not sure if it's myself or Sadiq or you, Ismail. But what I'm basically saying is he needs to
I'm
come in the room.
yeah, come in the room and ask, brother. I don't want to
Yeah,
assume what you're talking about.
yeah. We don't,
Um,
and
yeah, I don't want to
we're
assume what you're talking about. Just come in, ask.
yeah.
If you shy to come in, take the time, type out exactly, the question you want to ask, and inshallah ta'ala, we'll deal with it. It's not really a problem. Okay, I see him saying, I'm wondering what the Sheikh meant when he said that we're not good enough. Did the Sheikh mean people believe that black people aren't good enough to marry? If he was referring to me, right, not good enough, black people, was I talking about black people? Okay, if you're black and
No,
you're saying,
I don't think he's talking about you. I think he's referring to something Ismail said.
What did he say?
okay, I mean, I can't answer for nobody else, but I'm gonna tell you, typically, when I was talking about the issue of racism and things of that nature, that's exactly what I meant. Me personally, is that you have individuals that will come and tell you straight up, you as a black person, you could be good enough. And Ismail, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And likewise, Najeeb, you can be good enough to be the imam of the masjid. You could be good enough to teach us about the religion. You could be good enough, to take us on Umrah and to be the, and to be the guide on Hajj. You're good enough for all of that. You're good enough for me to ask questions to you. You're good enough for you to come and perform the marriage for my relatives and them. You're good enough to come over my house and to eat food with me and everything. But you better not ask about my sister, because then it's going to be a problem. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I've seen this specifically. I've seen this personally, that
Yeah.
when it comes to that, no, you ain't good enough to marry our women. Why? Because you black. And that's the only, there is no other justification. It's nothing to do with the Deen, nothing to do with the finances, nothing to do with nothing. You're black, you ain't marrying our women. We don't marry our women to black people, period. And that's all it comes down to.
Right. And just for the record, the brother Abdul Rahman Barakallahu Fiqh, maybe I don't know if this is what you meant, and I stand behind Sadiq 100%. You don't have to, and again, if maybe you type something the wrong way and we misunderstanding something that you're saying. But in the event you or anybody else is getting offended by this, I want to tell y'all right now, just stop. Whoever it is that's fronting and faking and acting like this doesn't exist, please just stop. Stop, pump the brakes, and let's deal with the issue. Because a lot of y'all are racist. I'm going to tell you to your face, a lot of you are racist. I don't care if you got black friends or a black car or tires on your car is black. That don't mean nothing to me. A lot of y'all are racist. A lot of y'all do use words like nigga, and a lot of y'all will get angry if a black person asks for anybody in your family and you will not do it. And you're verbal about this. A lot of you front, you cut. This is just the reality. Now, the thing is, nobody, a lot of times, because we're not, it don't, to me, if somebody say, look, somebody look me in my face and be like, oh, say something to me, we don't feel insecure or inferior. Like this, we're not looking down at ourselves because of that.
You understand what I'm trying to say? If anything, we're trying to keep ourselves back from laughing at you for looking stupid. And I'm not saying you, Akhi, specifically, but I'm saying for the people who have that mentality, because what do you think? And this is just the reality. And these kind of conversations are hurtful because nobody wants to get exposed. And again, Abdul Rahman, I'm not saying you, but I'm just saying people don't want to get exposed for who they really are. You know what I mean? For you to come like you look stupid and sound crazy for being a racist and call yourself a Muslim at the same time, right?
Yeah, but one second, because he's adding comments, so he's bringing more context to what he was saying. So first off, he says, "Forgive me for not joining the Zoom, but I'm not able right now. I'm black, by the way. I mean what the sheikh on the bottom says. Okay, so he's referring to you, Ismail. So it says, yes, I understand, sheikh. How can we counteract that? I'm Somali, by the way. And then Lafa allow Sheikh read the comments. You've misunderstood me. So
Okay.
at any rate, so the brother Aslan is Somali,
Okay.
and apparently apparently he's asking about how to counteract this type of behavior as it relates to the racism that may be found amongst certain Muslims, especially as it relates to marriage and thus forth and so on. That's what I assume.
Okay. So
But again, he can express himself better if he just came in the room. He's saying that he doesn't have the ability to come in the room.
no, it's okay.
So we have to do a lot of assuming as it relates to what he means.
Okay, so
I think that's a problem.
Okay, so I'll address it if it was addressed to me. Barakallah fik ya khana. This is why we, as Najeeb said, it's easier when we have the brothers in the room because we can have a conversation and hear get the context of what you're saying correct. Nonetheless, or correctly. Nonetheless, I believe I understand what you're saying. First of all, I mean, to combat it, it's very difficult. It's just like combating bid'ah or anything else, any hirafat or any other dalalat. It has to be contacted with ilm. So it has to be, it has to be combated, with ilm. So when you bring, but the problem is we can bring ayat and we can bring ahadith. The same way we bring ayat and bring ahadith on the khutbah of Jum'ah or in classes or any durus or anything else. You'll give a khutbah in Jum'ah and tell the people that the Prophet ﷺ said, "A'fu al-liha," right? And clearly he commanded what Amr yaqtadi al-wujub to leave your beard alone and let it grow. You tell the people that Allah's messenger, who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sanctioned, وَمَا أَتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. Whatever the messenger gives you, take it, and whatever he prohibited you from, stay away from it. And then you mention the ayah, and then you tell them the Prophet ﷺ said an authentic narration and multiple narrations, showing the impermissibility of cutting your beard off. The people, that same Jum'ah, by next Jum'ah, they'll have a fresh shave. So if a person has, the only way it's going to change and develop is if the proofs and the evidences that combat and do away with racism, like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Da'uha fa innaha muntina," to leave off nationalism and racism and all these kind of things because they're repugnant and they have a repugnant smell. They're filthy, they're disgusting things. But as the Muslim has to accept that. He can hear it, but he has to accept it. So if he or she doesn't accept that, right, by listening to the text, acknowledging that it came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then applying, and the Muslims have to stop being in denial, because that's the thing. People don't want to deal with it. You know what I'm trying to say? And when something like this happen, okay, I'm dealing with some stuff like this right now, where you have people who don't want to accept and deal with the fact that they have made a decision based off of racism and nationalism and foolishness, and they would rather the world think that that's not the reality when they have verbalized clearly that that's the reality. Okay, so the Muslims have to acknowledge that this is impermissible, that the Prophet ﷺ has prohibited. That doesn't mean that you marry your daughter. For the record, we're not saying there's no benefit in people marrying within their tribes and within their nationalities. There are a lot of benefits that we can discuss for hours, but that does not mean that there's not benefits in doing something else. It's not, our religion is a lot broader than one situation. So you may find some benefit in two people, both from India, marrying one another. There's a lot of benefit in that. But then we can come from an entirely different perspective and show all the benefits of that Indian.
Yeah, I think the main thing is that there shouldn't be a problem if a person from a particular ethnic group just has a different preference outside of their own people.
Exactly. And you can't make and we've seen people on multiple occasions. People have excommunicated family members because they did this, because they married outside of their nationality. I mean, when you have Muslims, okay, and you have racism, you got classism, you have nationalism. It's so many different reasons. But when you have Muslims that are comfortable looking somebody else in the face, like one time we were at a gathering one time, and a brother told another group of brothers, this is in New York still, and this brother's from Africa. He told another group of brothers, he said, my family, he was smiling. He wasn't even embarrassed. He's like, yeah, my family will never accept you. Not to me, because I don't care. I wasn't looking. But one of the other brothers had made a comment like, yeah, you got some sisters, playing with him. And he said, yeah, my family would never accept you. And we like, wow. And we're looking at him and see, it makes you want to it's very difficult. You know, we from the West. So when somebody say that, we have a real aggressive, way of responding. You want to look the person up and down and say, first, nobody would accept. You know what I'm saying? I have a million things that came to my mind when he said it. And I'm looking at the brother, he said it blatantly. He's like, my family would never accept you. You understand what I'm trying to say? Like, why would you think that we would? So this is normal. And I've seen people, I'm talking about, we're not talking about juhalat. I'm talking about hufadh of the Quran. I'm talking about people that ascribe to the Sunnah. Some people ascribe to the Sunnah. And they are comfortable. They may not be as disrespectful or as blatant. I don't think that they're actually racist in the sense that they think that they're superior and somebody else. I would hope that. So we try to think good of our brothers and I hope that that's not really how they are, and that there's some other brainwashing or pre-existing, mental disposition.
Colonialism.
Colonialism, exactly.
That's the case. But the reality of it is there are people who are, that's not even an option. You have this brother that's, which like Sadiq mentioned, these are people these are not strangers. These brothers who know you. Maybe you was in the Jama Islamiyah with him, or you was overseas with him. This is your man. He knows you. And it's like, nah, when it's time for his sister, you've been waiting to get married through, 8 years. Y'all been studying together, doing everything together. It's time for a sister to get married. You're not even an option. People used to call me on the phone. Listen to this. People used to call me on the phone and say, or come up to me after Jum'ah and say, Salam alaikum. I need a favor from you. And I said, okay, what can I do? He said, I'm looking for a husband for my sister. And I say, mashallah. Okay, well, I know a couple of brothers that I trust and blah. He was like, whoa, you gotta wait. The brother has to be from, and he had mentioned his nationality. And they say, no, it's not for me. And this goes back to what Najeeb said about, or actually Sadiq said about knowing the family. He said, oh, me, I don't have a problem as long as the person is religious. But my family, they really want somebody from such and such a background. You think you can help me? And I'm like, first of all, look, just as a Black man, you really think I'm gonna sit here and be like, oh yeah, we're gonna go find somebody from Bangladesh, or we're gonna go find somebody from Pakistan, or from Egypt, or from nobody? Are you crazy? Why in the world would you think that I'm getting ready to sit here and support your nonsense? He like, my sister doesn't have a problem. She just wants somebody from Ahlul Sunnah. But my parents want this guy from here. Like, I'm really gonna take my time and go on the campaign to help y'all find somebody from your nationality.
When all these multitudes of qualified brothers are right in front of you.
Qualified. This brother sitting right next to me, Harvard. This one right here, Harvard, memorized 500 hadith. This one right here, Nahwi. This one here, I know him since he was a little kid. Everybody loved. Yeah, this one here was in Yemen 12 years. And you want me to go comb through New York and find somebody from your nationality? But that's how embedded this. He didn't even realize how crazy he looked telling me something like that.
Yeah, but see, that's what I was saying. Like, there's nothing wrong with a person married from their own ethnicity. There's no doubt, and there's definitely benefits in it. However, there shouldn't be a problem if a brother or a sister has a preference outside of their ethnicity. There shouldn't be a problem or a roadblock to making something like that happen, especially if the brother and or sister is righteous and all they're concerned about is a partner that's righteous as well.
Right.
Oh, and that's the way it should be. But unfortunately, many cases we find that's not the case. I hate to laugh, but that's all I can do from not crying, because it's so absurd where, like, especially, Ismail, like when he mentioned, I myself have been on the opposite side of that situation, that scenario, where basically people will come and tell you in so many words, listen, people like you and people that look like you, we don't see any value in you when it comes to marriage. However, I want you to go and find me someone who we do see value in to marry. It's just, on what level, does that even make sense in your mind that you can even come and speak to me in that manner? That, listen, I want somebody that don't look like you, ain't from where you're from, don't walk around in the hue that you have, so on and so forth, because they're not good enough, but I need you to go and find that for me. And you just look at them like, who in the world do you think I am? Like, do you really, who do you think you're speaking to at this point that you can even put forth that type of request and think that it will be respected? Do you understand? Because, I mean, they're basically insulting you, and then at the same time telling you, go ahead, be my errand boy and do what I told you to do now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, subhanallah, this is, and I'm being honest, and listen, for the people, who are tuning in, who they're not African American, okay? The people who are tuning in that are not African American, I just want to explain to you where a lot of this energy comes from. You have to understand that us as a people, we have been through a lot, right? And a person may say, but your family, some of your family's Guyanese. Yeah, that's true. Some of my family is Guyanese, but they're African descendants. They're from the African diaspora, okay? So they just got off the boat first. But the other half of my family, they was on the boat a little longer till they got to the Carolinas, right? So listen, all right, I ain't got to say no more about that. The point is that a lot of us, we come from backgrounds where we dealt with racism, systemic racism. We dealt with straight up racism from the non-Muslims. Some of us ourselves, due to that racism, responded by being racist against white people and everybody that's not Black. And then Allah guided us to Islam, and we accepted Islam, and we embraced it wholeheartedly, and we got rid of that racism, right? When I say embrace it wholeheartedly, I'm not saying we're the best Muslims, right? I'm not saying we're the finest of the Muslims, because we're not. I'm not saying we do everything, because we don't. But when it comes to that racist issue, we embrace Islam wholeheartedly on that racist issue, and we threw that stuff out the door, not dealing, out the door, period. You understand what I'm saying? People who used to call the white people devils and all this type of stuff, threw it out the door, who will have no problem marrying a Caucasian sister, a white sister, no problem. You understand? So you need to understand how deep it hurts to now interact with your brother after overcoming all of these hurdles, after overcoming all of this nonsense that you had dealt with in your past in Jahiliyyah. You have dealt with that. You have, gone beyond that. And then now your brother, who you thinking should be on the same page because he was born and raised Muslim, he should have been on this from, since he was a little kid. Now your brother looks at you and treats you in this manner. Your brother looks at you and treats you, like some person who you will expect in Jim Crow South to treat you. Your brother sit there and treat you like a person who wear a hood and burn stuff on the weekends. It's like, subhanallah, it hurts. So the response, yes, is visceral. It's a visceral response, because how in the world, you my brother, and you going to treat me like this? You going to talk to me like this? And you my brother, and we not supposed to be looking at each other like that? The best one is the one who has the most taqwa, and you going to talk to me like this? So that's why, that's where that energy is coming from, for those maybe who don't understand. And at the same time, I want to say this as well, because this is something I have dealt with. Again, being from a West Indian background and an African American background, so on and so forth. I have individuals who will be from non-Black people, right? Who they don't see what I see. Why? Because people don't treat them like they treat me. Do you understand? People don't treat them like they treat me. And because they don't see it, they'll try to convince you it didn't happen. Now, me as an individual, like if I seen it happen, You're not going to convince me that I didn't see what I saw. If a person treated me in such a way and spoke to me in such a disrespectful manner and so on and so forth, you're not going to tell me I didn't see what I saw. I know what I saw. I know how he spoke to me. And I know how he treated me. You're not going to make me doubt my own experience and go with your narrative. You wasn't there. And I'm telling you, this is what's taking place, right? And the reason why is because they don't get treated like that. So they don't see it sometimes. But because you don't see it, don't mean it doesn't happen. It happens. It happens. And those for the good brothers. You know what I mean? And for the perpetrators of it who do it, I mean, come on. Don't try to pull the wool over my eyes. I know how people treat us. And I know what people have said to us. And then again, as being in a position of imam, I know people who will come and talk to me as if I'm not black about black people.
Me too.
You know what I mean?
Me too. It's sick.
Understand. Yeah,
It's sick.
It's like nah. Or you know what hurts? You know what hurts? When I have Muslim brothers that will come to me and they will tell me, yeah, we remember you black, but you different. You ain't like them. SubhanAllah. What in the world? You understand? That's sick, Akhi. That's sick.
Yeah,
but I mean, but it happens, unfortunately, it happens. But and then I know it seemed like we went off on a tangent, but listen, it happens and it has an impact on marriage. It has an impact on marriage.
But what I would say to the brother Abu Abdul Rahman as it relates to counteracting, these types of things, I would say that the counteracting and the changing starts with you. Because I believe that a lot of the elders, that people that grow old on that, a lot of them, it's like Ismail said, they have to literally accept what the text is saying. And sometimes these things could be so deep rooted that you will have to look at family members that are elders and recognize that that's just a flaw and a defect that they have with them, and that they may literally take that with them to the grave. And Allah knows best. But you as an individual, knowing that that is wrong, accepting what the Sunnah states, and that's what for someone, then you have to act differently in your life. Even if you are married if you marry, I don't know if you're married or not, but let's say, I'm going to assume that you're married and Allah knows best. But let's say, for instance, even if your wife is from your own ethnicity, then what you need to do is rear your children upon that which is correct. That their outlooks on these affairs shouldn't be the same outlook as your elders, from amongst those that hold and understand this. There's an expression in the States that if you want to change the society, you start with your home. You start with your home. You make sure that the people that are under your care, that they're understanding these things in accordance with the text of the Quran and the Sunnah, and not in accordance with whatever the old ways or the old thinking may have been amongst the elders. No. That's the way that you counteract that. And Allah knows best.
I just want to add one little thing to that. When it comes to this topic for the brothers, and sisters who may hear these kind of conversations, there's a lot of people, like I guess you want to call them social media influencers, who Muslims, Black American Muslims, who experience some racism or prejudice or discrimination or just bad etiquette from Muslims. And like Sadiq said, it hurts because you don't expect that. You come from whatever background we come from, kuffar and mushrikeen, and then you come to Islam and you learn about Islam and you expect everybody to be beautiful. And you find out that some of the Muslims have sicknesses in their hearts and in their minds. It hurts you. And some of these social media influencers, they are suffering from like reverse racism now or reverse prejudice because they're so angry, they get so frustrated about certain treatment that they start to dislike some of the other brothers and sisters from other places. That is just equally as sick. And you know, there's no way to justify that, because we are people of the text. We're people who stick to the Quran and the people who stick to the Sunnah. And like Ibn
That's right.
Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned, he said the cure for al-hawa, for your desires, is to oppose it. So if you have a desire to be rude or to, you know, respond and meet or greet racism or nationalism or classism with racism, nationalism, or classism, then you failed. So, you know, when you see us get upset, it's not because, you know, we have or we harbor any of these things. We do not agree with those social media influencers or, you know, callers or educators, quote unquote, from amongst the Muslims who find comfortable insulting our brothers and sisters from other countries, or because they feel like they've insulted them, or mistreating them because they feel like they were mistreated themselves, and so on and so forth. We are totally against them. And we love our brothers and sisters, and we recognize their virtue. Many, they have preceded us to Islam. Many of them have preceded us to the Sunnah. So we respect them, and we respect, you know, the efforts of them and their ancestors, and we appreciate the good qualities they have. But that's not going to prevent us from calling out what needs to be called out. This is an issue. And in my personal opinion, this and the fact that sadly and sickly, the women are not, you know, as into plural marriage as they need to be. You have somebody in the community, because the sisters, y'all can front if you want, but there are sisters in the communities who they know they have friends, for example. And the married women, you need to fear Allah too, right? You have people in the community, women in the community who have friends, and they have a sister that they're close to, or sisters that they have a relationship with, and they're able to witness the good qualities that the sister's husband may have. There are women who vent to one another. Okay, sisters, the intelligent sisters, they don't tell their business to everyone. They're very selective with when it comes to who they get advice from, and so on and so forth. So there's sisters who they may vent to some sisters and talk to their friends and say, listen, you know, this happened with my husband. And, you know, they may talk about an incident, a disagreement, or something that took place. And they'll go through the story. And the woman who's, you know, maybe a little upset about whatever this her and her husband went through is constantly expressing the good qualities that her husband has. And this may go on for years. She'll say, well, you know, his problem, you know, my biggest problem is he works too much. My biggest problem is he studies too much, but he takes real good care of us. I just wish he didn't work. So whatever it was. So the sister, the single sister sitting there, she knows this is a good brother. She knows he's a good brother. He's a good family man, so on and so forth. If that brother were to ask, she's going to say no, because, you know, I'm glad for you, but, you know, I can't share my man, or whatever stupid stuff that comes out of their mouth that makes them uncomfortable with plural marriage, right? And I use the word stupid because it is stupid. Because for you to sit back and overlook somebody in your community, like Najeeb said, we should start with our communities. And one of the reasons why women go outside their communities to get married is not because there's no brothers, there's not enough single brothers. People used to call me and say, Salaam alaikum, are any single brothers? They'll say any single brothers need to get married in the community. Where do you get this weird statement from? You think the Salaf Salih, that was their norm? Yeah, jealousy exists. But what difference does that make? You want somebody, you mean to tell me you have somebody right here who fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who everybody knows, who you know vicariously, right? Because you know his wife, you know his mother, you know his whoever, his aunt, his grandmother, whoever you know. Good character, has money, has the money to take care of you and everything. You don't want to do that because, oh, that's my friend. I understand, you know.
The Sahabiyat weren't turning down men because they were already married.
They weren't. It was just, if he fits, if he's a good person, that's it. So because the women are still weird, they got this weird, I don't share my man. Listen, sisters, just for the record, if you have a husband, unless he got like unless he's weird and he got like some type of weird asexualistic kind of disposition, if you got a husband, this is my opinion, right? This is my opinion. This is like a red table talk situation, but this is my opinion. Well, my opinion is if you have a husband, he falls into one of a few categories. He's either A, married to you without another wife and would like to have one, but don't want no smoke from you. Okay? Now, brother, brothers right now.
So he lied to her.
Right. He's sitting there, all of them weird questions. One of the conditions is you can't get a second wife. And if you want to get a second wife, you know, you got to let me out of the marriage. If you know how crazy you sound, but you brother to sign that, y'all are crazy. You brothers that, and I mean sign figuratively, the ones who say yes, don't get caught up with how beautiful she is or her character. Don't ever let nobody trick you into get no situation like that. But sisters, your husband, if he has one wife, I don't care how, it's not about him not loving you. And we'll get to that in another time. But he falls into, in my opinion, and I know the brothers, mashallah, I think, you know, the brothers on this platform we experienced, we've been imams and du'at and involved in communities on administrations and met a lot of brothers, both foreign and domestic. MashaAllah, la quwwata illa billah. And I believe all three of us are qualified to talk on some level when it comes to experience with brothers and how brothers think. If you're married to a brother and he doesn't have another wife, he falls into one of the few categories. He's either A, wanting to do it and not doing it because he's scared, he don't want no smoke, no problems with you. Okay, so he's just going with the flow, making tahajjud, making sujood, making tawaf, making hajj, making umrah, and begging that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give him another wife, that he can keep you, and that everybody can harmonize and have a beautiful marriage. B, trying to figure out if he can do it without you finding out, which is something I would never advise a brother to do. Right. Or C, resenting you because you're not cooperating. Okay, you're not gonna find a regular brother full of testosterone, masculine, all man. But for some strange reason, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, he said, "Hubbiba ilayya min dunyakum an-nisa." He said the thing, he used the word hubbiba. When you say hubbiba in Arabic, this is the majhul. That means, yani, women have been made beloved to me. Okay, so the ism is, you don't know who is the one that made him love it. It's not mentioned in the sentence, but it's implied that it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because Allah is the control of the hearts. So Allah made the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam love women. This is what Allah did to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He made him love women. He said, "Hubbiba ilayya min dunyakum an-nisa." The thing that has been made beloved to me, meaning by Allah, from you people's dunya, is women. That's the first thing he mentioned. Okay, and he said, well, tayyib, and oil. And he said, and the salah has been made, the salah has been made a coolness for my eyes. So there is sadly enough some brothers in this ummah who are real soft, and you know, some of them they just have a strange, I mean, and that's not the only reason. There's some brothers that, mashallah, they have a focus and that's not their thing. But on average, brothers are not going to sit back and look at plural marriage. I see some of these soft, weak, spineless individuals on social media advocating for the dismissal and the eradication of plural marriage. Muslims, right? They're speaking out against it. They don't want it. What kind of man is that? You know what I mean? We used to have a saying back in the day, right? Pull your skirt down because you're acting like a girl, like fix your, woman clothes.
One second, Akhi. We have a guest that just entered the discussion. Assalamu alaikum.
Fadl ya khana Idris.
And where you tuning in from?
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam alaikum.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
كيف حالك الإخوان؟ إدريس من نيويورك موجود في جدة.
حياك
أنت
الله
في
يا
جدة
أهلا
الآن؟
وسهلا. حياك الله يا أهلا وسهلا.
يا خالة.
يا مرحبا.
Do you have a question or a comment or?
No, just listening.
حياك الله يا مرحبا.
So, but you didn't have anything you wanted to add to the discussion, huh?
No, barakallah feek.
Okay, I'm gonna finish up my.
Okay. Then what I'm gonna do then is I'm going to exit you from this particular. You can. I don't know if you were trying to find out how to watch the live stream. You can go directly to YouTube, to Pure Islam channel, and it's on YouTube at the moment. But this particular link was for people that were coming in to add to the discussion, either with a question, a comment, or if they heard something that they kind of differed with, they wanted to give a different perspective, and that's what it's on.
Okay, inshallah.
If you're
Jazakumullah
trying to
khair.
find out how to somebody has YouTube on, I believe, right? To Pure Islam channel, and it's on YouTube at the moment. But this particular link was for people that were coming in to add to the discussion, either with a question, a comment, or if they heard. No, so I think that was his. I think that was.
Yeah, I think
his.
that was the echo.
It might have been mine. I think I might have hit it by accident.
Oh, okay, yeah. You gotta keep the volume down. Any rate, man, we've been here for 2 hours. I think the polygyny topic is one that we need to set up for straight up solo a solo discussion, because that topic in and of itself too is very vast. Just dealing with polygyny. What I'm going to do, inshallah, is I'm going to give you each of you guys the last word, and then we'll sign out, inshallah.
All right. Now, inshallah ta'ala, I just want to, there's one point that I wanted to mention as relates to the courtship stage of the marriage. And that is that it is of extreme importance that you marry a person based on who they are, and that's a big capital letter N-O-T, not according to who they have the potential of becoming, right? One of the poets he mentions, he says, وَلَمْ أَرَى فِي عُيُوبِ النَّاسِ شَيْئًا كَنَقْصِ الْقَادِرِينَ عَلَى التَّمَامِ. He said, I've not seen a deficiency amongst the people similar to the deficiency of those who have the ability to become better, becoming better. Now, so as far as potential, people have a lot of potential, but how many people actually reach their potential? How many people live up to their potential? A lot of people fall short. They don't reach their potential. And it is not from the sunnah to marry a person based on who they may become. You have to marry them based on who they are. And we see that the ulama, they mention and they extrapolate the benefit as it comes in a hadith of Abu Bakr bin Abu Jahm bin Sukair, where Fatima bin Qais, she was looking to get married. And the individuals who had proposed to her, then they were Muawiyah, Abu Jahm bin Sukair, and Usama bin Zayd. And when she asked the Prophet ﷺ about these three potential suitors who had interest in marrying her, the Prophet ﷺ, he mentions, he says, as for Muawiyah, then he is a poor man. He has no money. And as for Abu Jahm, then he is a man who keeps his stick on his shoulder. Now, there comes another narration that is found in Ibn Majah that he beats his women. So don't marry him. The Prophet ﷺ, he told her, but rather Usama, to marry Usama bin Zayd. So she married Usama bin Zayd. So she said, قالت فتزوجته, so I married him, فأغضبته به, and I was very pleased with him. Now, the point of reference here is that Muawiyah at the time, he was poor. He was poor. So the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned not marrying him due to his current situation, although he later went on to become very rich. But at the time of the inquiry, he was poor. So the Prophet ﷺ said, don't marry him because he is poor. He has no money right now. But rather marry Usama bin Zayd. So we learn from this is that you don't look at what a person could become, because the reality of it is that Allahu a'la wa a'lam. They may become that, they may not become that. You look at them based on who they are. You understand? And with that, the brothers who play games and the sisters who have unrealistic expectations, they can save themselves a lot of trouble. because how many brothers play games, right? And they say, well, I'm gonna marry this new shahada, or I'm gonna give dawah to this lady, and then if she become Muslim, I'll marry her, so on and so forth, because she could become a good person, and then 6 months down the line, divorce her because they say she's not religious. You know how many times I've had a situation like this? People will come and say, listen, brother Imam, I got to get rid of this woman. Why? She not religious. Okay, what's the background? Well, I was giving a dawah. She worked in my job. I gave a dawah. She became Muslim. I married her, and this and that. How long she been Muslim? 6 months. What kind of religious you think she's going to be in 6 months? Yeah, subhanallah. Do you understand what I'm saying? But then they leave her, get another new shahada, and then Allah musta'an. Or how many sisters are married, brother? Well, I thought I could make them better. I thought I could do this, thought I could do that, thought I could, enhance the situation. And then he ends up not meeting her expectations, and then she lets him go. When you look at the history, what's the history? What's going on right now? Well, the brother's lazy. Okay, when you were courting him and then during that situation, was he, he wasn't lazy then? No, he was lazy then. So you married him thinking he was going to change and no longer be lazy when he was lazy then, and then your investigation shows you that he had always been lazy, but now because you thought you was going to get him, he's going to change, not going to be lazy no more. He has no ambition. You hear things like this. He has no ambition. Well, did the brother ever have ambition as far as you know? No. Before you married, did he have ambition? No. Was he ambitious? No. But you marry him now, he's going to become ambitious all of a sudden? The brother's not religious like I thought he was going to be. Why? You thought because he married you, he's going to get religious? Oh, the brother's not upon sunnah. Okay, was he upon sunnah before you married him? No. So because he married him, you thought he was going to become on the sunnah because he married you? You understand what I'm saying? Like, people set themselves up for loss. In order to preemptively avoid these issues, marry a person based on who they are. So whatever it is you're looking for, whatever are your non-negotiables, what you're looking for, make sure they are present at the time of marriage. Not people who are developing into your non-negotiables, no, but people who they have these characteristics before you marry them. So, and then people, who will grow, and as a couple, you grow and you become better. But the point is that those things that are non-negotiables, make sure the person has that before you marry them. Don't hope that they will develop them after you marry them, because that's a gamble that most of the time they lose with, and it ends up in divorce. So this is just a point I wanted to mention on that. With that, نكتفي بهذا. صلى الله عليه وسلم على نبينا محمد. الحمد لله رب العالمين.
So briefly, if I can, inshallah, first I want to just extend my apologies if, I came off to any of the listeners, too aggressively, or if I got too, rambunctious. But this topic, again, as I mentioned, I dealt with a lot of things. So just as your brother, these things are therapeutic for me, because this stuff has to come out, and it needs to come out on forums when I'm with my brothers who are there to keep me, in line. These topics are, I've seen a lot of toxic things take place within families. A lot of, sad stories that came as a result of some of these marital problems, specifically the issues that we were dealing with, like racism and the fitna that takes place between husband and wife due to the husband wanting to take on another wife. These are some major things affecting our community, both foreign and domestic. And, they're just some, they're sensitive spots for me. But yeah, what I want to close with is a statement from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just a piece of an ayah. Allah tabarak wa ta'ala, he mentions, وَتَعَوَّنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَوَّنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he commands us to aid each other upon righteousness and upon piety, and to not aid each other upon sin and transgression. And the Sheikh Abdul Rahman ibn Nasir al-Sa'di rahimahullah, he commented on this, and he said, "Ay liyu'in ba'dakum ba'da 'ala al-birr, wa huwa ismun jami'un li kulli ma yuhibbuhu Allah wa yardahu min al-a'mal adh-dhahirati wal-batinah min huquq Allah wa huquq al-adamiyyin. والتقوى في هذا الموضع اسم جامع لترك كل ما يكرهه الله ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم من الأعمال الظاهرة والباطنة وكل خصلة من خصال الخير المأمور بفعلها أو خصلة من خصال الشر المأمور بتركها فإن العبد مأمور بفعلها بنفسه وبمعاونة غيره من إخوانه المؤمنين عليها بكل قول يبعث عليها وينشط لها بكل فعل ذلك وبكل فعل كذلك. The Shaykh, he said, commenting on this verse, here when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to aid each other in righteousness and piety, and to not aid each other in sin and transgression. He said, here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that let all of you, one of you, aid one another. Each and every one of you aid one another upon righteousness. He said, and righteousness, al-bir, is a compound word, an all-inclusive word that comprises of everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves and is pleased with from actions, be those actions outward actions and apparent actions or inward actions. Those actions that establish the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the rights of the slaves. And taqwa here is, in this particular context, is a compound word, an all-inclusive word that comprises of abandoning anything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hates or dislikes, him or his messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam hates or dislikes, or that they are displeased with from the actions that are apparent and outward and the actions that are inward. Okay, and he said this means that every characteristic that is considered a good characteristic, we have been commanded with carrying out that characteristic. And every characteristic that is considered an evil characteristic, we have been commanded to abandon that characteristic. He said, for indeed the slave has been commanded with this action of righteousness and the abandonment of this of actions of evil. The slave has been commanded to carry this out himself and to aid and assist his brothers from amongst the Muslims in performing these righteous actions and staying away from these prohibited actions. And that all of them, he should do this any kind of way by encouraging and pushing his brother or sister to do these righteous actions. So that being said, when it comes to getting married, we should start trying to make sure that we marry the right people for the right reasons, right? With the right information, that we make the right decisions as it relates to marriage, and that we encourage and aid others. Starting with, and my advice is that we start with our own families. So for the brothers who have young children, excuse me, not young children, young men and young women, 18, 19, 20, 21, who need to be married, who are at that age and you start to see things in your children where they want to get married. Not because you want to force your children to get married because you're worried about what your neighbors are going to say and why haven't y'all got married yet and they're not ready. No. I mean, when you see that your children are they reach that age and they have that kind of disposition where marriage is necessary for them, at that moment, we should, as parents, as fathers, and even mothers, try to pair our children with people who are good for them. And even if they don't have all the necessary faculties at the time, all of the finances and everything is not in place, that we aid them in that. Even if it means, listen, I have my son is 18, 19, 20. You have your daughter, she's 18, 19, 20. I think your daughter seems to be a good girl. We watched her grow up, or we hear good things about her, or she's a friend of my daughter, and my daughter, loves her, says she's such a good girl. I would like to know. I talked to my son about it. He's interested. I want to know how you feel about that. If so, we can sit down, have dinner, start to discuss it, work on the plan. And if they have to get married before the boy is financially ready completely, he's in the process, but he's not all the way there yet where he can maintain the family, doesn't have the maturity to maintain the family, the finances, whatever the case is, that we aid them in this righteous action. We say, okay, look, you can come stay in my house. I have my attic. You can stay in the room in this room. And we support them. We aid them in performing this righteous action. In order to protect their private parts and protect them, save them from any fahshat and evil. We have an obligation, as the Shaykh explained this ayah, to perform these righteous actions ourselves and to aid our brothers and sisters around us, starting with our families, in performing this righteous action. So we want the fathers to not shy away from this and the mothers to not shy away from this. Don't leave these children, or these young people, I should say, to fend for themselves. We have to, even after the marriage, after they move out, we have to be involved, not prying, not being nosy, overwhelming or overbearing, but we have to be involved in making sure that these marriages last and that they're being cultivated the correct way. Just because children are married, because a boy is married, and because a girl is married, doesn't mean that, okay, they're ready to go off on their own. We have to constantly and continuously aid them in its righteous action of marriage and being successful at it. So that's all I wanted to mention. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك وهذا وصلوات الله وسلامه على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تمسك بسنته ليوم الدين. Sadiq, I'm sorry, you're going to say something?
No, I just wanted to, just reiterate just one last time so no one has any, they don't walk away mistaken in any which way, shape, and form. Rectification starts in the home. How we combat the issue of racism is that we combat it within our own families, right? And that we educate them and teach them so that they're open to marrying the righteous person, whether that person is Black, white, Arab, Asian, right, Latin, whatever the case is, that they are open to marry the person who is righteous, right? And that this is what we're on, because this is what we should all be on, right? And I know the brothers, not getting into anyone's personal situation and things like that, but typically come from families that are mixed and that have people who are mixed within the families and so on and so forth. And all of this is accepted because this is Islam, and this is how we all have to be. And as far as the racist, then that's not acceptable, and we're not going to accept it or tolerate it, period. So we encourage everyone to, if that has been the legacy in your family, then you break that legacy by doing what is correct and living in a manner that's according to the book and the sunnah. So whoever's righteous and they come, then you entertain them. If you're pleased with their deen, then you marry them, and you marry off, to them, those who are seeking to be married, regardless on how they look, regardless on how light or dark their skin is, so on and so forth. None of that at the end of the day is really the issue. As long as the person is righteous and there's some attractability there between the two, that's it. That's it. So I just wanted to just, really hammer that home so no one gets it misconstrued, exactly what each and every one of us is upon as relates to this particular issue.
And with that, we're going to close out. We started at 9 o'clock. It's 11:35. And so I don't want to prolong this discussion any longer. So with that, subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. To the listening audience, we thank you all for tuning in. And we'll try to get this discussion going again next week by the permission of Allah. And with that, assalamu alaikum